Okay, what an introduction. Just us before lunch, right? We've heard a lot this morning. And I think our brief is just to try to underline some of the things that we've heard with a provocative and very straight-talking panel. Now, to do that, of course, I have to give the guarantee that these are the views of individuals, not of the organizations. But we're going to be able to, I hope, give some home truths and some very clear thinking about really what does success look like with transformation. Now, hopefully, I'm going to get a slide now that's going to give some statistics. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can get oh no, there was one before, there we go. So we talked a lot about the method and how, but we've not talked really so much, I think, this morning about the outcome. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And I think we all know to an extent that commercialization or customer engagement models of life sciences have not been particularly effective really over the last few years. And I'm lucky or unlucky enough to be coming to these conferences for maybe 10, 15 years. And we've talked a lot about transformation. And do you know, technology has really led the conversation here an awful lot. But in my experience, and this is, of course, straight-talking, provocative panel, I don't think it's really cut the mustard. I don't think it's hit the mark. Certainly not to the way you see the return on investment of business cases when they're put together for these massive investments in technology. So when we started to get together and talk together as a panel about really how we're going to approach the question, we started to talk really around the idea of this. So digital transformation is not adoption of technology. But all too often on a day-to-day basis, we find that really those become our roles. And as we are about to embark upon another merry-go-round of new technology, AI, large language models, machine learning, all of these things that have the potential to make our lives easier, I think the question starts to become, well, if these are the answers, what is the question we're trying to ask if these are the answers? And are our organizational models really set up effectively enough, given the data we saw before, to be able to take on yet further complexity and further investment and more effort? So my opinion in this is that we're not set up well enough to do that. I think that we are organized around internal priorities, around products, around our silos, and we are not orientated in a way that really helps to achieve customers develop value through their interactions and their investments with us. So we have a Slido, I believe, if we can pull that up. And this is a question I'd like you to answer. Have you got is this coming up on people's screens? Okay. So if your company was to provide customers what they really need, what they really, really need in their jobs when they're trying to go about their days, would you need a different customer engagement model? So you can see the answers. There is maybe a provocative statement that's in there somewhere. I'm not sure if it's made it to the end, but there is for those who feel like giving the answer, do you know what, I don't actually know what customers need, then that could be the answer for you. Okay, so we see the results coming back here. The headline is we would need substantial change. Any comment on that from Morgwn first?
Well, it is before lunch, so I'm going to make sure I talk a lot. All right. And if you know me, that's not actually a surprise. I think it's no surprise also that a lot of companies are saying, and a lot of you out there are saying that your organizations would need substantial change, or a change to the engagement model. Because the fact of the matter is we work for hugely complex and well-established organizations. Even if nothing was to change with our engagement model, navigating the matrix organization locally and then at a regional level, and then with global and enabling functions is immensely complex. And I would say it's difficult to find even significant pockets within many organizations that are truly customer-centric and focused on delivering a customer experience. We are, I can make a generalization, and it's my opinion, not anything from VMS. We are very sales, brand, and product focused, almost the exact opposite of what we want to do. So we need to wait for a pocket or a bubble of customer centricity and genuine market-oriented people to rise to the level where they can make decisions and leadership and shift the direction of the entire organization. And that goes well above designing a new engagement model because it requires almost institutional change. That's not to say it doesn't happen. I've seen it happen, as I've said, in pockets, in markets, but also in other organizations where there are the green shoots of genuine customer centricity. Because my background is outside of pharma, and I think every panelist and every person so far has said we're not there yet. My question is, where is there, and will we ever get there? But I can tell you that from the customer experience leaders that have been referenced earlier, automotive, financial services, a lot of the service providers, we're certainly not there. We're a long, long way from there. So the good part of that is a lot of what you can do that is seemingly common sense to us CX sort of operators and experts is high impact and low-hanging fruit. Sometimes the low-hanging fruit is a hell of a lot harder to grab than you think, but it's there. There's a lot of big-ticket items that we can use to move the needle on customer centricity and the engagement model.
Great, thanks, Morgwn. So, Olivia, I wanted to ask you then, what do you think is the biggest risk in applying new technologies within legacy product-centric engagement models?
I think the answer is quite simple, actually. I think the risk is that you automate dysfunction. You use cutting-edge technology to do the wrong things faster and at scale. So then layering AI onto a product-centric model, great, you will definitely improve your promotional efficiency, but you will miss an opportunity to drive true value exchange and hence miss that transformational opportunity to truly become customer-centric. And what you end up with is basically a digital veneer on an outdated operating model that still does not address what HCPs actually want and need. Think about personalized engagement across therapeutic area perspectives or solutions that actually address patient problems rather than product messaging. And you showed some data, but we heard earlier throughout the day as well, we are still not doing a good job at engaging the majority of our customers. And just because it's before lunch and you said we're going to be provocative, and excuse my language, so let's cut the BS, we're actually doing a crappy job at it. And so if we then try to bring in technology to put a little plaster on that gushing flesh wound, that's a slippery slope right from there onwards. And so let's think about how we can use technology to transform the model rather than turbocharge the status quo.
Wonderful. Thank you for being so provocative. Exactly on brief.
It's lunch. We need to keep people, awake.
Some energy. Wonderful. So you talk about a lot of change there, and that can be quite overwhelming. And Christian, in your job, which is really about changing capabilities, how are you going about transforming from very functionally organized capabilities to those which are truly customer orientated?
So I think there are many changes to be done, but if I would simplify it a bit, there is one change which is around behavioral shifts and mindset. There is a second shift which is around organizational design, structure, and collaboration. And then there is a third shift in how we're remunerating and basically giving incentives and how we steer. So to the first point on mindset, I think this is a leadership effort, and we all can ask ourselves the question: how often have we collaborated with the HCP? Has this content been co-designed or the solution? When was the last time I visited the customer? And it will be interesting what the answer will be, how often it actually has been done. On the second piece, on organizational design, I think it's going back to what you have been saying. How can we best set up our teams to ensure we're customer-centric in a way that we don't have silos? We're working in TAs or cross-TAs in a way that customers understand, well, this is not another pharma person coming one day after the other and asking yourself the question, are they really aligned, and what is really the mix and the orchestration of different channels? And then to the last point, in terms of remuneration, do we incentivize share of voice, or do we go beyond that? And also, what is the degree of incentivizing experiments versus providing very harsh feedback when things don't work out in terms of failure? And this is a nice reference point to what you have been saying, Morgwn, that if you look into other industries, such as financial industries, they have been re-innovating or reinventing their model. I think ING, the Netherlands bank, is a great example, because they have been very bold in how they shape their organizational model from a product to really a customer-centric organization with agile squads and tribes, which can be also a very nice way how we can inspire ourselves, how we shape our design. Yeah.
Thank you. So if you think across the whole value chain, for those of you who touch other parts of your organizations, you would know that research and development, supply chain, and other parts of the business have undergone massive innovation. The way that they do their work and the work that they do on a day-to-day basis is very different than the way that it was maybe 15, 20 years ago. But in the commercial functions, while there's been some digitalization of work, it's still pretty much trying to achieve the same things. They're still trying to engage customers with content and messages, but there hasn't been a big transformation within the way that commercial operations work. Now, building upon the last panel, I think it was Mustafa said that he thought that the playbook would be, for content creation, would be 5 pages out of the 100 of which would contain everything else to do. In your opinion, what do you think would be the work for the remaining 95 pages if it was to undergo significant transformation of the commercial model? Morgwn, I'll start with you.
I wish we rehearsed this one. I haven't thought about this. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we were talking over breakfast, and similar to the last panel, I think it becomes the role of marketers or the customer experience specialists to deeply understand the customer, because that's where our value is. Things are going to get faster in terms of how quickly our products move and evolve in the life cycles. Things are going to get more competitive, and that's a way of saying we're not going to have the huge buckets of pharma money to throw around that we used to. I mean, we're seeing some of that already, and I'm sorry to the 2/3 of you who are vendors in this room. Like, that's just the reality. And in order to be that fast moving, we can't fully commercialize products anymore in the way that we have been traditionally. So a lot of that playbook is going to be about developing customer centricity and deep customer knowledge. And the flip side of that, I mean, how you get to know a customer at any kind of scale is through the data. So beyond data literacy, but becoming subject matter experts in your customers through their data. Because when everybody says, what do our customers want? You've got to go out and talk to your customers and find out what they want. And I agree. But customers don't always tell us what they want as the response to market research or a question. They tell us what they want through their behavior. And that's something that we can track without being obtrusive. So it's data and understanding the customer.
Yeah, great answer, even though we didn't rehearse it. Apologies for
No,
that. Olivia, I'll ask the same.
I'll take a slightly different stance. In the future, we're hopefully able to become more customer-centric, and you mentioned it at the beginning, we should stop focusing on internal priorities and start thinking about external value, which means that playbook should not have more than 5 pages, full stop. Why are we still creating playbooks with 95 pages that we then sit in meetings to review for hours and hours and hours, instead of actually being out there and truly understanding what is the issue that the customer is having and how are we going to solve it? So I would say there's nothing on those pages because we don't have 95 pages anymore. We have 5 pages that are clearly focused on what we need to deliver externally versus, the navel gazing that we tend to do. So cut the playbook.
Great. Thanks, Olivia. Christian.
So to answer your question, it reminded me of a recent study done by Bain asking what they value most from pharma companies. And it was not the number of calls from sales reps. It was the level of network we can also provide to them, connecting them with peers, providing relevant data, specifically when we speak about new therapeutics and launches, and also orchestrating and supporting in patient processes. I think it's good to have content faster, quicker, more personalized, but it may not address the 3 or 4 mentioned points I've just been sharing. And if we think broader into a healthcare ecosystem, rather we should choose our battles and understand how can we support, for example, patients in their onboarding, how can we help when we speak about specialty care to find the right patients who need the drugs. And this is actually what healthcare professionals value in addition to content. And it goes beyond a content playbook, to be precise.
Wonderful. Thank you for your answers. And if we understand that customer experience is the perception that a customer has of your organizational brand as a result of every touch point, just the marketing or sales touch points are a small component of that. And when they're trying to work to improve patient outcomes and experiences, then doing the kinds of things you mentioned will ultimately improve their experience and their loyalty and proximity to them. So I have one more question before we'll go to the audience. And that's just around, based upon your experience, any advice you have to help the audience to try and create more value for customers?
I mean, I can't speak to individually where you sit and what your roles and influence are, so I can only speak from my own experience. You know, I lead Omnichannel for BMS in Germany, and there's a whole universe of decisions and technology and initiatives and programs locally, regionally, and globally taking place. And the one thing that I've always stuck to in my role is do what you can where you are with what you have. Because if I spent all my time waiting for the next thing to finish, if I was letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, I would never get anything done. I mean, I get little enough done at the moment with all the meetings that I have. So in the time that I'm not in Teams meetings, I want to be able to use the things that we've got. I mean, we highlighted earlier, and I'm sorry for rabbiting on, but we have a few minutes. One of the risks, you know, if this AI transformation fails, I mean, I think the risk we have is something we've experienced time and time and time again, is that we have a really fancy, shiny object sitting in the car that nobody really uses anywhere near to the full potential that it presents. I mean, one thing I did say to you over breakfast is it's like we've got a garage full of Ferraris and a whole bunch of lemons and everything in between, but we're still riding our bicycle or maybe even our tricycle to the shops. So when I say do what I can where I am with what I have, we have a hell of a lot. Like, we have some amazing tools and technology. We have a lot of data. So when anybody sits in a meeting with me and says, oh, but we don't have data point X, we don't have data point Y, I'm like, fine, you know, come to me and I'll fix that when you've used everything else you've got, you know. I don't need you to personalize emails based on the customer's hair color, because you're not sending segmented emails. You're not sending any kind of dynamic content, you know. Getting their name right isn't personalization. So there's so much we have that we're not using, so much we could do that we're not doing. And I would say just go in and find something and do it, and see what works, and make mistakes. And I love the idea of doing the wrong things faster and at scale. I think that sounds fantastic.
Olivia, any advice from you?
So what was mentioned earlier in the morning today, I think first of all, continue to obsess over that question, not what your customers want, but what problems they are actually facing that they would love us to solve. The second one is, I kind of agree with the 51% who said we need substantial change. I was more with the 17% who said, you know, we need a complete overhaul. And, you know, feel free when you go back to your organizations to blame it on me and say it's Olivia's fault. But I honestly think that we need to reorganize the way that we approach things. And the HCPs and the patient's needs should become our organizing principles and not an afterthought. Because at the moment, we're talking a lot about how can we work better together to become more customer-centric, instead of saying how together can we better serve the needs of our patients and of our HCPs. So, you know, go back and have those conversations and do try and reorganize around the customer journey, and do understand all the different interactions that a customer has along that journey with your company versus just your siloed functional touch points. And with that, you know, break down the silos between marketing, market access, and commercial, and ensure that you have cross-functional teams that align around common objectives that are grounded in customer orientation. And I could go on and on and on, but I see we have 5 minutes, and knowing that lunch will come, I'll just stop it right there.
Christian.
To focus and complement the answers with a more tech perspective, we know that 95% of Gen AI projects, according to MIT, have zero return. And there is a risk to become what I call a digital fashionista by just jumping on the next tech trend. And I think this is important, that we balance the tech intensities, what we're going to implement over the next years, and there will obviously more trends to come, considering exponential growth of technology, with the right level of transformation management, which means that we need to pick the right use cases, we need to phase it, we need to ensure our tech stack is ready, we have data foundations in place, but also we orchestrate the change along the way with the right use cases in place.
Great. Thank you very much. We have time for questions. Now, I can see one here, but think carefully. You are stopping us going to lunch. You do understand? Okay. Wonderful.
I know, guys. Thank you, Nikolai Shenin, Customer Times. I want to build on Christian because I kind of have a deja vu here. I've been to Next Pharma 3 years ago, and people talking about implementing technology. At the time, it was blockchain and VR, and now we're talking about AI. But I cannot truly see what changed completely. And I agree that we need kind of overhaul of the system. So what would you say changed and changed the value for company in the recent 5 years? What you're doing before as a company, and now you're doing it completely different, in a completely different way, and it brings value to organization. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer. To choose a couple of examples. So when we speak about deriving the right insights, I think there is a lot we can do in terms of augmenting our teams to get insights faster, which took them a lot of time in the past. So there are specific AI-driven use cases which help to summarize ATUs, so the way we ask for customer feedback and preferences in a very quicker way. And this is where large language models can help a lot in terms of providing those insights faster, and you can use it for engagement strategies or other activities. When you look more into the orchestration of different channels, obviously we're able to understand better different segments, and you may use AI to find correlation according to different preferences and channel affinity, and define it in a more targeted way to not overwhelm the healthcare professionals with too many of interactions, but with a more targeted approach. Is there more room for improvement? Obviously, yes. But has there been some significant change over the last years? I would say so. And last but not least, when it comes to organizational model, which go beyond technology, I have been observing that many pharma companies have been testing new engagement models which are more collaborative, trying to break down silos. And as an example, ING, I think they did a great work in the financial industry, which is a good example on how you can become more customer-centric in thinking, marketing, sales, medical, even all together in the way you engage.
Can I just add real
Please.
quick? And again, I'm going to be provocative. Maybe that's also because I'm getting hungry. My partner would say I'm getting hangry. I think we have seen change, yes. Do I think it has been significant? Absolutely not. Because when you compare to any other industry, think about banking. When I grew up, when you had to go to the bank, you had to physically go somewhere, you took out your coins, usually there was a retired person in front of you, you exchanged all their coins for notes, you waited for hours, you did what you had to do. Think about where banking is nowadays. I don't know when's the last time I had any coins or notes or anything. Everything is digitalized, everything is flawless. And now think about our own industry, where we were 10 years ago and where we are today. I'm not saying we haven't seen change, but it's very small, it's very incremental, and it hasn't been as significant as personally I believe it should, which is why I was with those 17% in terms of we need a complete overhaul. But again, maybe that's the hangry me talking.
I think time is up. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.